Good afternoon. If I can ask folks to take a seat. Thank you. So this is the OPSAREA meeting. If you're in the wrong room, would be a good time. No, not you, Daniela. You get to stay. All right. So we have, the note well. I'm not going to read it out. You have already agreed to this when you registered for this meeting. I'll just leave it up for a few seconds, but I would highly encourage you to read the links. Basically, the idea is that we follow a code of conduct, respect everyone that attends this meeting. So for people who are in the room, please remember to sign in to Meet Echo. You can do that via the data tracker or the QR code for the session, which you will see on the It'll also be used for you to queue up to the mic when you want to speak. So you can use the Meet Echo Lite if you're in the room. If you are, of course, remote, make sure you keep the audio and video off if you're on site. But if you're remote, you keep audio or video off till either because and turn it on only if you believe you're presenting and are chairing the session, which you are not probably because both of us are here. And the use of a headset is, of course, highly recommended. If you come to the mic, please state your name so people know who you are. So this is the agenda for the meeting. We are already in the first one, which is agenda bashing and introduction. So maybe at this point, the question is, does anyone have anything else they would like to see discussed in the session? Okay, I don't see anyone rushing to the mic. So, excuse the typo. The first session is State of the Ops Nation. Daniel, who is presenting? I think start with Daniel. So the idea was that this time, instead of giving everyone less than a minute to talk about the working group, was to give a limited set of working groups to talk a little more depth about the state of their working group. And 3 of them were selected. The first one is IV. So let me get you a slide deck. And let's give him the clicker. All right, that's yours.
Okay, so this time we will try to make it a little bit longer than 1 minute, but we'll try to stay below 5, not to bore people too much. So this is not my slide, I guess you added it, but it's simple to go through it. So at this time we picked some working groups to give you a little bit of update of what's happening, what we are doing, our charter, and so on and so forth. These are, so from the ops working groups, You'll get a brief introduction on what's happening in Ivy and Bond and Cedar Ops, and the OPSAREA will be covered by Bo after this. Let's start with Ivy. So, main working group objective. Ivy talks about inventory. Actually, there was a bunch of people, mostly coming from optical background, that started to push some inventory work. When was it? A couple of years ago or so in C-Camp, in the routing area, the working group that mostly deals with optical. But there was the feeling that this is something that was needed with a broader scope. So Ivy was created to cover not just optical, but inventory in general. When we speak about inventory, we don't just refer to hardware. We cover hardware, software, and we recently added also entitlement, licenses, and so on and so forth. So basically, everything that belongs to you in your network. Another thing that we are covering is physical location. This is another thing that was missing in the existing work in IETF. And another topic that is part of our charter is the correlation with existing models. In particular, we are working today on a model that creates a relationship between inventory and topology. And we thought that this was particularly useful for troubleshooting the network and to have a better knowledge of the network. Another thing, we deal with network models, not device models. So everything that we build is a model that applies to the northbound interface of an NMS, an SDN controller, so whatever has a network view. Current working group of topics. I mean, we have, I think the next slide is probably the best to go through this. So we have a core model, which is pretty close to working group last call. We are doing the last IPR checks before moving it to last call, which defines the core model and hardware inventory. And then we built on top of that. It's something that we are augmenting with a lot of different models. Just one thing, at the very beginning, we wanted to have a short-lived working group. One draft, and we were supposed to be done. And as you can see, we successfully failed once again. We have 5, 6 drafts, and more are coming. So we have a software inventory, which is augmenting the core model. The location model, which is again augmenting the core model. The mapping between topology and inventory, and entitlement. And this dual color code that you have here has a double meaning. So everything that is orangish, it's working group documents. The other one are still individual contributions. But there is also another distinction that this coloring is providing, which is everything that is orange is part of the charter. The other documents, the other areas are not quite part of the charter. Actually, this morning when we met, we decided that passive inventory is part of the charter, so that will soon become yellow. The equipment capability application is we are just opening a new area that needs a lot of exploration. I think I covered more or less everything. Scope, applicability, history. Yeah, that's it. Quick enough? Next one.
Any questions actually before?
Any question before I leave?
Barring none, Mbon.
I get his 5. Oh, Great, thank you. I'm going to talk about MBOND, which is multicast operations and deployment. So that's the focus of our working group, is the documentation, description, and encouragement of multicast deployment on networks. In terms of the hot topics, really multicast to the browser and multicast for live streaming. These are kind of hot topics. We have a cluster of documents that is intended to make multicast safe for the browser, DORM, CBAC, and AMBI. There's work being done elsewhere on multicast extensions to Quick, but we're tracking those. And then multicast for live streaming, we actually had a side meeting just to delve into that this week, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. In terms of what we've done in the last, since the last IETF, adopted a multicast securities draft, security considerations draft, which is very topical because as people begin to think about things like using multicast for over the internet for streaming, these issues of security pop up. Their multicast is no more or less secure. It's just different things to keep in mind, and that draft does a good job of describing that. We have a couple Yang documents, multicast models, as well as AMT Yang models in working group last call. And one of those, the DORMS draft is ready for working group last call. So let me go into a little more detail about the side meeting we had. This is kind of like maybe the most exciting and hot topic that we talk about. And why it's hot is because the streaming world that we see, particularly when it comes to live streaming, is different today than it was about 3.5 years ago. And it is, we're seeing live streaming events with tens of millions of viewers now. They're happening routinely. These are no longer one-offs that you can just ignore. And it's kind of pushing the limits of what CDNs and operators can handle on the network. And the reason I say 3 years ago, that was when Amazon Prime first had exclusive streaming rights to American football on Thursday Night Football. And they get, on a weekly basis, 3 hours a night, 16 nights a year, about 10 to 15 million simultaneous streaming viewers. Comcast came out and said that roughly a quarter of all internet traffic on a Thursday night is this one game. And that's not even in 4K. So 4K would probably roughly triple the bit rate. So subsequent to that, you saw American football picked up on other streaming services like YouTube and Peacock, and records were set there. And this isn't just an American thing. This is being seen all over the globe, no more so than in South Asia, with the kind of the numbers in the last 2 years with cricket have been staggering. They keep shattering their own record. The most recent one was earlier this year with 60 million concurrent streams. And really the kind of the big moment that kind of removed any doubt that brute force unicast could just keep up and be viable forever was at the end of last year, the Tyson Paul fight, where there was 65 million. It set a number of records for the internet, 65 million concurrent viewers, as well as 85,000 complaints and 2 class action lawsuits. The thing to keep in mind is that networks need to be planned and capacity needs to be built for these peaks. So even if this happens only, once a month, once a week, once, every now and then, you still have to build capacity for those peaks, not for the average. Another thing to keep in mind is that live stream, a lot of people say, well, video's video. We've been doing video for 15 years. People are watching Netflix movies every night. What does it matter whether they're watching a football game or a Netflix movie? The truth is live streaming is far more demanding. First and foremost is latency. You can't afford to have a playout buffer to handle things like congestion and packet loss, because you know, if you have a really, you know, a minute-long playout buffer, might be fine for a movie, but you know, for a game, you run the risk of getting a text message from your friend about the game-winning score a minute before it happens, or hearing the bar across the street, people cheering before you see what happens. The other thing is that join rates are spiky as opposed to smooth. A typical operator can tell you very well that they have these, you know, diurnal patterns of traffic on their network. There's significant differences between peak and trough during the day, but it's smooth and predictable. When it comes to these kind of content, you know, it's more like a step function, as everybody tunes in when the game starts and they tune out when it's over. So the key thing is we can't keep considering live as just a special case of on demand, and video is video and they're the same. Live should be treated differently because it has different set of requirements for the network. So what was the purpose of this side meeting? What we've come to see is that there are multicast solutions that have emerged, and innovations exist in different worlds. There's kind of the network world, layer 3 and below, and kind of the streaming world, layer 4 and above. And there have been innovations and advances in each of them, but there's not a lot of awareness between each of these worlds. So we kind of, so you know, in the multicast world, TreeDN, which is RFC 9706, it's kind of just the fusion of SSM and AMT that addresses the traditional problems that have prevented multicast from taking root on the internet. It kind of addresses all of those issues. A lot of folks aren't aware of that in the streaming world. Likewise, in the streaming world, there are things like, you know, MABR, MAUD, open casting are models that support multicast and give a full ecosystem of solutions. As well as, you know, there's a lot of work being done for ultra low latency with UDP. And UDP streaming, and then there's the multicast for quick extensions that are being proposed. So the goal was to connect these worlds with a focus on layer 4, because that's a much more interesting and dynamic place. The network world, you know, between SSM and SSM and AMT and TreeDN, we feel like there's a lot of a maturity in the solutions there. So we want to really focus on the streaming aspects of it and do a gap analysis. What's missing? What works? What doesn't work today? And see where we should explore. In terms of the meeting itself, it was, we had a lot of people, standing room only. So that was a good sign. We had really great conversations and discussion. There will be a recording. I'll post it shortly when I get a chance. But I would encourage folks who are interested in this topic, check out the recording, because it was a really interesting open discussion. We started with asking the question, is internet multicast a bad idea whose time has finally come? And then we had some folks from Aircast talk about their real world deployment. They use multicast to provide ultra low latency in venue for the US Open tennis event earlier this year. And it was a great success, and they're eager to advance to move outside the venue. So we came up with just kind of a number of concerns. You can see this list. Things like adaptive bit rate, you know, a lot of these things are areas and topics that, you know, a lot of people have said, oh, you can't do this with multicast. You can't do encryption or access control. It's really difficult. Or ad insertion, bespoke ad insertion can't be done. Reliability, multicast over Wi-Fi. There's an RFC that essentially says it's not very good, and yet the Aircast folks were able to describe their deployment and how it worked very well for them. So these are just some of the topics that we touched on. In terms of key takeaways, what we found is that, for each of these things, solutions do exist, but in many cases, they're not well known or understood, or they're not concentrated in one place. This information is kind of dispersed in many different places. Did find that there is broad interest in this topic. I can say I've been working on this problem for, the better part of probably over a quarter of a century, and interest for a long time in internet multicast has waned, but I think there's a lot more interest than there was. I think if we'd have had this meeting a year or two ago, we wouldn't have gotten half as many people in the room. So it was, again, I think this might be a bad idea whose time has come, because just the audience sizes and the bit rates and the traffic is just too big to ignore. So in terms of the big question that our ADs wanted to know, what does this mean to MBOND? How will this, what implications does it have? In terms of our charter covers this type of thing where we explore and analyze and provide a venue to discuss these topics. Some of these aren't necessarily in our working group, but we do have a home for these discussions. So no real changes in terms of charter or focus. I think we're well positioned to continue doing what we're doing. The one thing that we did find is that maybe there's a lot more streaming stuff, and maybe MOPS might be the right and more appropriate place to coordinate some of these parts. That's kind of in their charter. So I think in terms of going forward, going ahead, I think more coordination between MBOND and MOPS to talk about these issues probably would do both groups well. So happy to take any questions. Leslie, you weren't there. I'm speaking in vain, taking the name of your working group in vain. Hopefully you don't disagree.
Leslie Daigle, co-chair of the MOPS working group. No, I think it sounds good. When we chartered MOPS, we promised that there would be coordination between MBOND and MOPS. So it just sounds like we should put some muscle into that.
Yeah, it hasn't been bad. It's been appropriate. I think might be a good time to beef it up. Any other questions?
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Lenny.
Okay, CyderOps, Luigi speaking. CyderOps stands for Secure Inter-Domain Routing Operations. Okay, this is the key summary of what we are doing and the status where we are, but I have a couple of more slides. The main, let's say, work that we do is to identify if there is any issue with the, let's say, CyDR-aware internet. So the part of the internet where CyDR has been deployed already and is growing. Identify any issue or interoperability issue with the not CyDR-aware internet, okay, and try to fix all the issues that we found, okay. I will cover the current topic in the next slide. The main achievements since 1, 2, 3 was we have a new RFC, okay, and we did good progress on a couple of drafts that we have in the queue, okay, and we are currently rechartering, okay. Why should you care about CyderOps? Well, just of an example, in June this year, there was a prefix hijack attack. It's not unusual. Some people use it to impersonate Luigi.com. The peculiar thing was that this time was about prefixes that host the root DNS server, which means that basically you can impersonate Luigi.com, Mario.com, IETF.org, etc., etc. Okay, this attack lasted 90 minutes. if CyderOps was deployed, CyDR was deployed in the region where the attack took place, we would have 0 minute of attack. Okay, myself, Russ Housley, which is the co-chair, with the help of Greg Wood, we wrote a small blog. We posted a small article on the IETF blog, if you are interested. Okay. So what we are doing, as I said before, we work on maintaining and updating the RPKI infrastructure and all the technology and protocols that are around, which means, for example, part of this infrastructure is the protocol between the relay points, okay, that validate actually the origin of the prefixes and the routers, okay. Because we are adding new features on which we are working on, there is a need to update this protocol, okay? And this is the work we are doing with 8210bis, okay? This was actually went up to the ISG, but came back because we wanted to add some features, namely the ASPA part. And there was a little bit of contention in the working group because on the ordering of some information, but we were able this summer to unblock this part, and we are making good progress. So hopefully very soon we will push it again to the ISG. Second part, so at the very end, what we do is to provide a mechanism to verify if a certain AS is entitled to announce a certain prefix or set of prefixes, right? Which is pretty good. And as I said in the previous slide, it's very effective when deployed, okay? Now we can push this a little bit further, okay? Because ASs have a relationship, okay? Provider, customer, and peering, okay? This relationship as guides the way you announce the prefixes through the internet, which prefix you are announced to which neighbor, okay, depending on this relationship, okay? And so what we are trying to do is now to include this knowledge, let's say, in the security infrastructure, and have a mean to verify the IS pass of a prefix when arrives to you, for example, okay? Which allows you not only to block the attacks when you are close by or just the origin, you can also verify the pass, the AS pass, so that you know that there are no detours and weird stuff going on, okay? We have a few drafts that cover this part. In looking a little bit forward, so if you look a little bit the infrastructure that we have, there is basically the registries publishing ROA, so the object that allows you to validate the announcers, right? Then there are the relay points that take all this information from the different parts, validate, and then push it to the routers. Okay, usually between the registries and the relay points, we use rsync or RRDP, okay? There is good and bad, okay, but each and every relay point has to continuously check in various sources in order to collect all the information and then give something that is consistent to the routers, okay? So what the group is start to discuss is something else, a different protocol, which is called ERIC protocol, in order to basically do caching and have a more effective way, okay, to share the knowledge between the different relay points of the caching, so that it becomes more efficient, less bandwidth hungry, and so basically working better. So this if it happens, will take a little bit of time to develop, but looks pretty promising, I would say. And last point, rechartering. How we ended up rechartering. So was a little bit overdue. If we look at the charter that is on the data tracker today, you see that it's something that has been written a few years ago. But what really happened is that in the current charter, the one that you find in the data tracker, there is, CyberOps is not allowed to publish standard track documents, okay? Yet, we did it for several years. But at the beginning of September, one of the documents in the ISG, the ISG noticed this incoherence, a standard track document coming out from the CyberOps group, okay? So block, okay? So what do we do to solve this block to continue working and obviously update the recharter? Plan A, met the AD, discussing with the ISG, can we let this document pass and we will work with the group to recharter? No. Plan B, the chairs. Let's try to push a small update on the charter, just to add the standard track documents, okay, to the charter, to unblock the document, and then we do a full recharter after 124, okay? But the working group said, no. We will go for a full rechartering. Why this? Because they wanted to include also implementation policy. A couple of years ago, the group discussed heavily on this point. The decision was tracked on the wiki of the group, but never formally introduced on the charter. So the group decided we prefer to go for a full rechartering right away. We delay a little bit some documents, but we want the implementation policy in the charter. And so we as usual, we discussed on the mailing list for a while. You have the result on the slide that you see there. The point is having at least 2 interoperable implementations when we push protocol specification for publication to the ISG. Now, actually, today, during the last meeting that we had on Monday, the question came up, if I have a protocol specification for a client, which interoperates with the current infrastructure, do we consider this like 2 implementation, 1 implementation, what? So we will have to refine a little bit the interpretation here, but we will continue. Hopefully we will converge soon, okay? We did less discussion on the goals, okay? But I think that this will not be difficult to do. We don't need to have complete new goals, just an update on what we can include in the charter and we can work on and what is out of scope. And that's it from my side. Any question? Check the blog, it's interesting.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bo. On behalf of my co-chair, Daniele, I'm here to give a status update on Ops Directory. So what does Ops Directory do? Here's our major objective. First, we try to increase Ops awareness and help identify Ops considerations and issues to be covered by IETF specifications. And second is assisting our Ops AD with ISG telechat preparation. And we also perform early reviews, provide early feedback with Ops focus before working group last call. In this way, to help improve the IETF working group quality. And for membership, Now we have 48 members, including 9 recently onboarded reviewers. So welcome to the team. And what we have achieved since last IETF meeting, we received 42 review requests, including 22 last call reviews and 20 early reviews. We completed 32 of them of all of them, 42 on time, 8 delayed, and 10 incomplete. Of all the 32 completed reviews, what do we find? The good news is there's no serious issues, but still we have 6 drafts with has issues, 12 with has needs, and 3 not ready, and 11 ready. So that's almost covered our completeness. But still, we have 10 incomplete we're working on in the future. Here, I'm here to thank every reviewers to help us to finish this complete. Thanks to everyone. Thanks everyone's hard work and dedication. And we also like to highlight our top outstanding reviewers of this year. Giuseppe, Joe, Tony, Linda, Daruf, Chin, Samir, our top 7. Thanks, special thanks to you. And though we made some major progress since last IETF, like on the screen, you can see that since last IETF, we had made some progress. We has less completed, and we had a better completion, average completion days. But we still facing some challenges. Though we have 15 newcomers on board this year, even with this is quite great. But even with this, we still have 10 we cannot complete the reviews. Then we did some analysis of all these 42 incomplete. We found that there are 21 of the docs security related. And most of these documents lacks operational consideration section. We think that is part of issue that that may leads to this incomplete. And the other reviews is another issue is review cycle is slow, because our target completion review days is 2 weeks. That's 14 days, but now it's 17 days. And part of the reason is that several reviewers didn't have accept that review within 1 week's assignment. We hope that every reviewer can give a quick feedback if it cannot be reviewed. Then the last issue we found is that our top 10 to 20 reviewers carry 6% of all assignment. We think this is not sustainable, and we hope we'll in the future we'll do some adjustment. Then, based on these challenges, we feel that a new review template can help us to resolve some of these challenges. So what does this new template has? The first thing is that we want to raise awareness of everyone that we believe every IETF specification should have an operational consideration section. And in this section, we hope there are 8 core questions need to be considered. There are 3 of them are management questions, that is typical for management, configuration management, and performance management. And 5 operational questions, that is also very typical, that related to deployment, installation, migration, requirements of other top protocols, verifying correct operations. So we hope this new template can help us. And how to use this new review template? At the beginning, we rendered this new review template with a GitHub, so reviewers can use easy copy-paste into review. And we also have the review checklist that you can see what's the detailed description there. But we also have some updates on this new template, the usage. During this IETF meeting, Daniel Lei, our AD, and IETF 2 team successfully included this template as part of review completion failing. So we think this can easily help us to help everyone to use this. And here we like to getting feedback from every reviewers. If you have some question or discussion on this, please send your email to OPSAREA mailing list. We can still working on that template. And the other some work, we think that we still hope there are more reviewers with diverse operational expertise, especially like the challenges we faced there, not only from the ops working group, but there are security, art, int, and WIT, these areas. So to widen our coverage and strengthen across area inside, we really encourage anyone has this kind of expertise join us to help us to improve the operational directories work. So that's all the updates from Ops Directory. Thanks, everyone. Any questions?
So I put myself in the queue, of course, but others feel free to come up. So thank you for suggesting a template. I think it should help reviewers in focusing in on what to provide as review. The question is for the people who did not complete the review. I don't know if you got a chance to talk to them to find out were the reasons personal, or was it difficulty with reading the document and evaluating it for operational considerations? Did you get any feedback?
Right now, we don't have some feedback, but sometimes it's because we got some rejection. The reason is that the draft is just too long, like more than 40 pages. They need more time. That is one of the reason. And the other time mostly is the time management sometimes. So, but I think from my perspective, I think if there's a specific operational consideration section that for our ops reviewer to focus on, that is much comfortable way to go. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Have
thank
you
you.
another? Thank you, Bob.
My slides were uploaded on time.
We have some technical challenges with the slides not showing up. So give us a couple of seconds to see.
So as a segue from Ops Directorate, when you mention your template with multiple things to pay attention to, we're going to discuss the RFC 5706 and have an update on this one. It's about guidelines for operational management. Thank you. So guidelines for considering operations and management in IETF specification. We spoke about the Ops Directorate, and I'm sure that you are aware of this RFC. Now, this is joint work by Joe, Adrian, Samir, Carlos, Ran, and myself. These are the exact same slide that we presented in the Ops MLUG, but this time it's a bit longer. So on the next slide. All right, so the RFC 5706 was published in 2009. It was a good discussion at the time with operational management consideration, but now after 15 years, we understand that the content is stale and we need a refresh. So a refresh, a cleanup. The thing is that it was addressing the same time different audiences, the protocol designers, the protocol reviewers, and the ops reviewers. And also, we had in there a long series of technologies that are not specifically available or not the one we want to use in the IETF these days. So it speaks a lot about MIP. Now, the guidance that is in the title of the RFC was somehow lost in the mix of technologies and everywhere. So also we discussed just the Ops Directorate, and sometimes they come too late. So it's glad to have you, Hugo, presenting on behalf of the Ops Directorate and more members. Great. But at the time, people don't want to change a document. So, you know, they spend like 2 or 3 years already, and it's up to the AD to say, I'm going to block it. So in the end, nobody's happy. So actually, you have to scroll down. This is because it's PDF, maybe. I don't know. I loaded PowerPoint. So it boils down to having an operational consideration in all the drafts. I mean, these days, nobody questions the fact that we've got security consideration, even if at the first versions of a draft, we put TBD. Now, this is the idea there. And even if we call this operational consideration, it's actually operations and management. But we don't think it makes sense to just have a long title to specifically know that we have 2 areas here in the IETF. So operationals is both of them. On the next slide, please. And obviously, we're going to obsolete 5706, the old RFC. Now, this is the aggressive plan proposed by MET some time ago. And the week of April, we wanted to post the first version. And then what we did is that we've been having like weekly meetings with the set of authors and updating directly document in GitHub, which was actually very efficient. Now, the idea from Matt was that he would AD sponsor this document. It would become a BCP and would be last call like last month. So this was an aggressive plan. We didn't succeed, but to me it doesn't matter because we've been actually very successful to include work, to get reviews, and to progress the document. So that's perfectly fine to me. Now on the next slide. we see the progress there. In the middle is the picture. We got 3 revisions already before IETF Madrid, and now 3 extra ones. And as I said, we meet weekly. We do the GitHub PR directly. We approve this, very efficient, and I advise everybody to work that way for drafts. Now, Alvaro is a routing expert, and he kindly accepted to be the document shepherd, which is great because we believe that somehow we are ops people, so we're convinced we want to have ops information, but sometimes it doesn't make sense because it's already an ops document, so having this section in there is redundant. Whatever. The point is that the routing area is going to be our first customers for operational management, so thank you, Alvaro. We received a lot of feedback already. And something that changed in this plan is that while it was AD sponsor at the beginning, now we thought, and Med thought it would be better to have this as a working group document because we received so much feedback. And the working group is in the OPSWG. That's why I presented already in the OPSWG. But last IETF was presenting in this meeting. So 2 presentations. Now, this document is in the call for adoption in OPSWG. Since we already have Alvaro, since Joe and I, we're sharing OPSWG, Alvaro will be running the show of the call for adoption and etc. in the OPSWG. All right, next slide. So let's review the changes that we did. First of all, this is for all new RFCs in the IETF streams. We also refocus the audience. In the first version, we kind of said, well, there is something in there for the protocol designer. There is something in there for the AD. There is something in there for the Ops Directorate. There is something in there for, and we had too many audiences. So we refocused this on, this is for protocol designer or protocol extension designer, so draft author. We removed the available management technologies. We were still referring to MIP and Radius and TACAX, and maybe we're thinking to get Yang, but in the end, it will never be complete in this document because this document with guidance will stay there for a couple of years while the technology will evolve. So this series of technology will be in a different document. We also address a concern about operational consideration boilerplate when there is no operational content. I think the goal is that we want people to think about operation. We don't want to impose that they write something if there is nothing to be described. So there is this sentence there telling there is no new operations and management requirements introduced by this document. Fine. On the next slide. We spoke a lot about security practice, in this case when migrating, but also about SecOps. And Michael, I'm not sure if he's here, will eventually propose an OPSWG document about SecOps. Whenever we look up all the documents in RFCs, we don't believe we've got that specific document. We include OEM impact. We introduce text about verifying correct operation. We also mentioned something which is coming back to the IETF. This is the notion of an information model. Why, in one specific case, and we saw it with 2 documents in OPSWG, this is if we have 2 data models, typically Yang and IPFix, we want to define an information model that's going to make the link between those 2 data models. What they did specifically with the document is to have an information model in Yang. Why not? We don't want to impose that, but that's possible. And we introduced text about the impact on hardware, software performance, and AI tooling consideration. On the next slide. On the next slide, this is a slide that Adrian created because he presented in the routing area. And we're going to receive his feedback and the feedback from the people.
I feel like the backing singer coming on to do the chorus, which is like, comes around in every meeting this week. So I'm Adrian Farrell. I presented this in the routing area, and it's interesting to compare the audience because the point of this document is to give guidance to people who are not necessarily ops gurus. So talking to you guys, this is to kind of tell you what people outside of ops are worried about and thinking about. So these were the sort of three main points I think the routing people were thinking. They look at the draft from a long way away and they say, oh, this is providing instructions to the reviewers. And therefore, in some way, if we haven't done exactly what this says, the reviewers are just going to block our document. So the 2 points were that the guidance for the Ops Directorate is moved out onto the wiki, and Bo's in charge of that, and the reviewers will look at that as what they should be thinking about. But also this document is guiding authors so that they actually think about the right things and get their protocols right, and then their protocols will be better. Okay, they were also worried that this is kind of forcing some kind of checkpoint documentation. You've got to have all these lists of things that you are documenting that might not be relevant to you, and you end up with a whole list of, we thought about OAM, but it's not important, and we thought about this, and that's not the idea. Except for the fact that you've got to put this section in. So you've got to actually say, we thought about ops and we thought that we don't need to do anything for these reasons. Or, hey, this really triggered us and now we're doing it right. So it's to encourage people to think about operational considerations, and then it's guidance. And then the big thing that people worried about was when they're doing protocol extensions for a base protocol that is not well equipped operationally. And they're worried that their protocol extension will get blocked as it progresses through because an AD will say, no, you've got to go back and do operational considerations for the whole protocol. And our point there is, well, that's not our intention. But also we can't control the ADs. We'd love to, but ADs will AD. And if they put blocks on things, they put blocks on things. But this document is not giving them the leverage to do that. This document is helping people get better output. So what else popped up in the meeting? It would be really cool if the tooling automated some of this, at least put the section in place. And our thought is that if this goes all the way to RFC and is approved, then we can get into the tooling and do that. And was there anything else that people were raising?
So Adrian, I do have a question.
Yeah, go.
An AD will be an AD. And I'm an AD, so I worry that last statement that you made about the base protocol doesn't have operational considerations. Here I am an author. I'm trying to file an update and extension. I'm happy to discuss the extension of operational considerations, but I don't want to go back and have to specify. Is there something in the document that precludes an AD from blocking the document and to say, no, there is no such requirement that the base protocol considerations have to be in place?
No, this is not a process BCP. This is guidance to authors. And the only little bit of process is you've got to have this section. So if you believe that there's need to have process to stop ADs being dumb, then let's take that as a separate thing. But historically, the IETF has failed when it's tried to write RFCs like that. There is something that comes out of that, though, which is the base protocol is missing decent operational stuff. There should be a separate document doing that, fixing that, so that in a year's time, future extensions, there will be no debate about blocking it. That's probably a joint task between the Ops ADs and the AD responsible for the protocol that is deficient, and then firing that work up in a working group, bearing in mind that it may need Ops people to help them do it.
So Warren Kamari, recovering AD. It seems like, yes, you can't, ADs are going to AD and you can't stop them. But it seems like you could have something in the document when you're explaining to authors the purpose of this document, saying the intent is not to force you to go do blah, blah, blah. Ain't going to stop ADs from, ADing, but at least will help set the tone.
Yeah. I think that's right. And so my last comment here, and it was made at the mic in the routing area, was you are all going to be victims of this document. Review it.
So we've got 2 more slides. The next one. You see, you can control ADs. Next slide, please. So that's the list of open issues that we have. We've got 3 minutes. If there is one which is close to your heart, feel free. One that we've been debating, this is about the length of the document. Yes, you've got a lot to say, and it seems that it's always addition in terms of advice, consideration, and all this. And in the end, maybe we want to just turn it around and say, these are the things that you want to think about. And if you want to think about those, then we have an extra section somewhere with some consideration. This is what we're debating right now. Any other one that you want to discuss? And okay, the last slide then. It's still a call for adoption. It's running right now. Please review it. We're all affected, but actually we love ops, so this is a good document, right? And that's about it. What you could start doing is including this section already in your documents. Thank you. So we've got more time for questions, feedback. Thank you.
Before Chin starts, I just wanted to put a disclaimer out there that I think the idea of bringing this discussion is, it's not a foregone conclusion that the 2 working groups are merging. I think it's at a point that we are discussing the possibility.
Okay, good afternoon. And I want to introduce this BIPP proposal. So this topic has already been discussed on Tuesday in RPPM BMWG joint meeting. We hear a lot of feedback. So at the end of this presentation, we will invite Thomas to introduce these slides. And so for people who haven't attended this joint meeting, so it's a good opportunity to take a look into it. So what is the overall goal? So both IPPM and the BMWG working group has stick to the current structure for quite a long time. So we believe it's time to refresh it, work connectively, to better structure how IETF can better approach not only network performance activity, but also benchmarking activity. So we want to define the initial scope, the issue we really want to solve. And also we need to prioritize the work we need to develop. And to do so, we want to set up the work plan and refine the work plan and time frame based on input we received from this meeting. So we can put it into effect immediately. Summary remark, and if you follow the history of the IPPN and BMWG working group, both are long-standing working group. And both charter haven't been updated since 2018, and both have significant attendance overlap in the past, and also they have technology overlap such as performance metric and measurement method. And also they are in the ops area. So it will great to leverage the synergy and to work connectively, encourage more bridging. And so what is working group health? We can look from the working participation and contribution statics perspective. We see have 4 charts here actually. And from the working group attendee per IETF chart and working email discussion chart, you will see there's significant dropping for BMWG participation. And for BMWG individual job growth chart, you will see there's slow growth of new workers. So there's many factors to affect this statistics data. And but the important factor, in my personal opinion, is it lack sufficient input from the in user community and test community. And also, and we see, it didn't make a good use of cross-SDO collaboration. For example, collaborate with the SAE test community. And if you take a look at RPPM individual job growth chart, and we see noticeably growth of the new worker. However, RPPM has a 19 talk good practice, but there's a lot of good topic, didn't progress very well, and there's slow transfer rate for real standardization. So there's quite a lot of joint interest topic developed by the RPPN and BMWG, but they developed separately. And for BMWG, we see a lot of working group document in working group last call, but lack sufficient review. Just before this meeting, actually, there's working group document in BMWG. Actually, they extend the working group last call for another 2 weeks. So all of these issues, can result to this joint charter for better solution. So what's the benefit for this joint charter? We see top 3 benefit. In the past, both we see a lot of liaison statement has been sent to the RPPM and BMWG working group separately, didn't draw too much attention. So with this joint charter, we can provide a single point of contact for cross-SDO collaboration. Recently, we have a performance metric directly get a revival, so we can delegate this cross-area review to this directory to review the performance-related work in other working group in other area. And so the second benefit, we think we can make 2 working group work connectively, develop a common building block for performance measurement and benchmarking test. In RPPM working group, we have one of the example, one of the RPV6 measurement metric related work get a pushback block in the IESG. So one reason is security considerations. So this potentially also apply to the BMWG related work as well. So it will be great to develop a common security framework or template. So this can lay the foundation for the future work and also help IESG member to better understanding how this security consideration can be designed. And also we see a lot of cross-border work in both RPPM and BMWG, and these, for example, quality outcome in the RPPM working group, this really use benchmark work as a basis. And also we see some cross-border work in the BMWG, and for example, service benchmarking, actually they also apply to the production network. So what is the third benefit is increased contributor and a reviewer basis. So we can get a more sufficient review and not just focus on your own worker, but also we can help other people work. So we can, all focus on, the working group document in the working groups, so we can bring more new work before we really take on this kind of new work. So this will make a better progress. And so let's from another angle to compare, how RPPM charter is different from BMW charter. And we can compare them from very different angle. For example, measurement target, measurement environment, and the traffic source. I think the key difference between RPPM working with charter and BMWG working with charter, for RPPM more focus on production network, live network, and the BMWG focus on library environment. However, we do see quite a lot of cross-border worker actually and need to require both working group pay more attention rather than to build independently. And so common ground actually for both working group charter is performance metric and also measurement method. And here's the overall scope for this joint charter, and we have BMWG specific part, we have RPPM specific part. We hope actually for both working group can better leverage some resource we have, for example, performance metric directly. We can use this as a tool to provide better review on the performance metric related work. And also we can encourage more cross-pollination and cross-SDO collaboration, allow the liaison exchange between IETF and other SDO and other test community and user community. And the most important is we can say, make BMWG and RPPM focus on, there are some common interesting work. We develop a common framework and guideline related to the network performance metric and measurement methodology. And we already have some foundation work, such as obviously 2330, obviously 6390, and we can think about whether this foundation work can be better aligned what we have already developed today for both working group, and we use this as a new foundation, so for other work can derive from it. And also we see several open issues. Actually, this I discussed in the RPPM BMWG joint meeting. I want to highlight here. And the open issue one is about common framework and what it looks like. And we provide 4 building blocks. Actually, I'm not a list detail here. And the second is how we leverage a developer performance metric directly. The third issue is how we set a dispatcher role for this joint charter, joint working groups. And fourth is how do we review the performance metric developed by other SDO. The most important part is about open issue 5, and do we can have more implementation before we really move the working group document forward, so we can, based on this, get more experience and produce a more good quality of document. And so for more detail, please read the slide we list here, actually. And we want to call more feedback for this open issue, so we can understand, can better understand how to better shape this joint charter. And so here's a timeline for this, work, and actually on Tuesday we already kick off this work, and we, based on the discussion with both RPPM working with chair and the BMWG working with chair, we will schedule the interim meeting to discuss this draft charter. And we actually opened the feedback and looking for more feedback. The feedback ongoing, actually. So next, I pass this to Thomas.
Thanks, Gene. Sorry.
We could proceed, maybe take the questions, or?
That's true, yeah. Greg?
Yeah, if time permits, I appreciate
Sure.
it. Thank you. So a couple clarification questions. When you say we, is it reflective of community input?
Yeah, actually, just before this meeting, if you follow the RPPM mailing list, we already call for feedback on this RPPM BMWG joint charter effort. So in this meeting, actually, Thomas also, sent an email immediately after the joint meeting discussion.
Right.
So we open, call for community feedback. Yeah.
Okay, so are you saying that your presentation reflects community input?
I think we already, get some feedback. Actually, that's why Thomas will summarize this.
No, Thomas will summarize. Your presentation reflects community input or not?
If you follow the history, in previous meeting, we already, tried the experiment for this joint session. So at that time, we are already open for the, feedback on this. So this is just the second time we kick off this kind of joint charter discussion. So it's just the beginning. Yeah, do you have any issue with this?
Just to clarify here, Greg, I said the presentation here is just a start to have the discussion. There are already some early feedback which is received, I would say, by the team working on this. Nothing is frozen so far, and all the inputs are really welcome, and there is no, I would say, predefined conclusion for this. So I think that's, just take it as a start of, I would say, having the discussion. This will be continuing on both working groups, and I would say the objective here is just to, I would say, less the issues we are having, I would say, in both working groups. If there's things that are really okay, we'll be, I would say, maintaining them. And all feedbacks are really welcome.
Yes, thank you. So as I understand it, coming out of 123, a particular person, Chin, was tasked with creating the proposal. So I have not seen call for the community feedback after Y23 until 124. So I think that will be more accurate to say that this is an individual proposal, this presentation. And we will continue with the discussion. I appreciate this open call for the discussion, and definitely that will be something that will follow with a professional manner. But there are a couple technical issues that I want to point in this presentation. So since I was leading their project in Broadband Forum and encouraged to bring quality of outcome to IETF as continuation of the work on the quality of experience, I don't see any relevance to the benchmarking in that, because quality of outcome is for their production network, for their broadband access, to do possibly improve their experience, primarily gamers, and maximize on existing networks. So there is none whatsoever. So in my opinion—
Greg, please, if you can just, I would say, summarize a little bit. If you can just shorten with your comment, because we are running out of time.
Another troubling is I'm very much concerned with intention of reviewing measurement methods and metrics defined by other SDOs and Ethernet OEM. We have to be very cognizant of scopes and authority and not impose our opinion on others. So others are always welcome to come to IETF and present their work and submit their work. And that's basically why I encouraged quality of outcome to come to IETF and not to go and put our opinion on work others in other SDOs.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. So please continue the discussion. I would say on the both mailing list of EPPM and benchmarking working group, and I would say the Chin and also the chairs of both EPPM and benchmarking working group will, I would say, record all of those, and then during the forthcoming interim, we'll be, I would say, having again another discussion. So thank you for that, Tal. Yeah. If you can just make it a little bit short, please.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I have a definite opinion about whether to merge or not, but one thing that was raised on the mailing list, and I think is very important, is that we didn't have enough agenda time when we had the joint session, and we're going to have an interim 2 weeks from now, accounting for all the missing parts of the session, and I think that won't be enough. Having just one session for the two working groups just won't be enough. That's one aspect. And another aspect that you mentioned, Chin, is that there isn't enough volume on the mailing lists. And I'm not sure that's going to be resolved by merging the two working groups. I think we need to think about some more creative ideas about how to get people to review documents, how to get more discussion going, how to stir up the discussion. And that's not necessarily related to whether the working groups are going to be merged or not. I think that's an important issue.
Yeah, thank you, Tal.
Maybe just one quick mention. I mean, Tal and Greg already raised the points. If you look on the list with the first feedbacks, I think we see already some common grounds in here, and it would be great on the mailing list, like whatever, these are really the points we should discuss with each other and how we approach them best and find good solutions. So for instance, Greg was mentioning the lab environment versus production environment. It's not really the same, reproducible current state. There are commonalities in metric types and terminologies, for instance, or we had comments on these are different kinds, different group of people, or whatever one working group versus two working groups can simplify how to interact with other SDOs or working groups, and a question mark, unsure about that, or collaborate on scope intersections or entire scope. And then Tal mentioned it before, fear of working group will be congested. I think what I understood so far, these are the main topics. Probably there will be some more, so please give feedback on the mailing list, and in a joint interim session, we want to discuss more with you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I also want to add one more quick feedback to Tar's question. Actually, I think really for not just for this, joint working group, but also apply for other working group, we should encourage, to help to review existing working document before really take a new worker. This will help, to address this kind of, lack of review issue. So, yeah, that's my point.
All right. Hello, everybody. I am the messenger. Get out your bows and arrows. I'm Wes Hardiker, and Med asked me a while ago to get some feedback about how we sort of structure the DNS work within the IETF. So first, I'm going to talk about the problem. Why are we here? Why are we having this discussion? Did you transfer it to the clicker? Oh, there we go. No, it's there. So working groups, the DNS working groups in particular, and I mean, this problem is actually bigger than just the DNS, but we're only going to talk about the DNS today. But they vary in structure and how they operate quite a bit. Some are too big. Some are too small. Some are just right. So that's the end of the funny part. And one important aspect to note is this may not be a problem, right? We may not actually have a problem. And when I took on, the request to do this, I made sure that we understood there may not need to be changes. So I'm going to emphasize that now, and I'll mention it again later as well. We may need changes. If you look more specifically on the things that people have pointed out, both before I took on this project and since I've taken on this project, there's a large number of things that people have had concerns about. One, the DNS is very widely integrated into many groups, right? It's pervasive across all of the internet. Everything seems to bootstrap on the DNS. As we all know, just put it in the DNS and your problem is solved. DNS op itself is very busy. We always have 2 sessions. It always feels like they're crammed together agenda-wise. Protocol development is actually happening inside of an ops group. Some people think that's true. Some people think that everything we're doing was ops. Ops specifications themselves are developed too slowly. Sometimes people think that other stuff gets in the way and that algorithm updates and similar things should be faster. Focused working groups don't draw the right people. Some people have had the concern that when we put stuff off in a separate group, not everybody that needs to be there is sort of an expert in the right area. Some people think charters are too broad. Some people think they're too narrow. Some people think that charters are ignored, whether or not that's true. Again, none of these may actually be a problem. They could be a feature. That's up for you guys to decide. One of the reasons I'm here is that I actually don't have a stake in the game to some extent. So what we're here today to do is to really find out and to get feedback. And I've been collecting feedback over mail in the hallways and a bunch of other ways. I'll continue doing that for another month or so. what do we want to discuss? Like, what are the things that we can do? I mean, anything sort of on the table, and it's up to the IESG eventually to make a decision. We're only passing on information. We could reorganize working groups. We could recharter working groups. We can do your best idea. I would love to hear, you know, out of the box thinking, besides just the obvious stuff that we're all used to doing. And of course, as I said, we could do nothing because it's all working perfectly right now. We already have one participant. Excellent. So as I said, Med asked me to sort of collect the feedback. One of the things that I will do is sort of form a small group to form a recommendation afterwards to sort of analyze all the feedback. I'd love more. I've gotten a couple of requests from people that are interested in joining that. The one caveat that I've told people is you can't have a stake in the game if you want to sort of analyze the feedback, right? So if you believe you already have an outcome, you're probably ruled out of the group to do sort of the analysis section. And in the end, to make a recommendation to the IESG in particular. For how to talk, there is a DNS structure IETF mailing list. Is that right? Or is it DNS at IETF? Did I get those backwards? I might have gotten those backwards. I got them backwards. My apologies. So it's DNS at IETF at IETF.org. And then you can anonymously mail me as well. Go look in the announcement. They're correct there. And you can mail Med. So if you have feedback that you want to provide, but you don't want your name attached to it because you're worried, we won't go down the worry list, right? Please do find me and just let me know that, you know, this is sort of your personal opinion and don't want it widely advertised, and that's fine. And then finally, find me in the hallways. There's only a day and a half left. I've had a good number of discussions this week already. And then the rest of this discussion slot, I'm hoping for comments at the microphone. I'm not going to take notes now. I'm going to go listen to it again. So I have to double listen to this so that I can take notes later, but it'll all be written down and collected. Timeline-wise, the plan is we're going to continue collecting feedback for the rest of the month. We'll sort of do the analysis sometime, you know, within the time frame of January. December is always a slow month. And then finally, we're just going to give the recommendations. So what does the small team kind of conclude? We'll give it to the IESG in February, and then they'll make their decision about something to do or not do sometime around IETF 125 in Beijing. So I think this is the final slide. These are things that we can consider today. These are not the only questions. These are just seedling questions. If you're on the mailing list, you'll find that I've been dropping random questions just to sort of prompt discussion. It's been an interesting set of discussions. One thing that people want to know is where should work get done? Is there a need between the operation and the protocol split? In the past, we had DNSX and DNSOP separate. Now we have just DNSOP. I actually think both of those have worked fairly well. That's why I'm somewhat independent. But, you know, is there a bright line between them? Is it easy to define that line between them? And some people think that's easy, and some people think that's actually really hard, if not impossible. How do we dispatch new work? Right now, DNSOP has had it in their charter for a while to sort of act as a dispatch point. Is that the right place? Do we need a DNS dispatch group? There's been a number of people that have mentioned that, so there's definite thoughts in that direction. How do we deal with the work quantity? I think actually this is the biggest one that's not addressed. There's so much new work happening in the DNS space that it feels like no matter how you split it up, how many groups you create, whether it's one big one that meets all week long, or whether there's a lot of small ones, it's still too much work to handle at once. How do we structurally rate limit the amount of work to the available volunteers that exist in the DNS, regardless of the structure? I'd love to hear more about that one. I think that we're short on information about that one. How do we ensure that we're working efficiently? How do we keep from being overloaded? That's sort of tied to the previous discussion. And when do we need small working groups, dedicated one like ADD and DELEG and things like that, versus larger ones that are just more generic? And then finally, and I hinted on this one on the mailing list this week, how do we coordinate information sharing? It's very easy to get pigeonholed into your own working groups and you miss things being published. I hinted on the mailing list that I learned this week there was an RFC published that I did not know was even going to be published. So, you know, I myself am as guilty for missing not only discussions and internet drafts and work being done, but even the final product I was not aware of. And I think, you know, the number of RFCs we publish, that's easy to happen. So with that, I'm going to stop talking other than I may ask some clarifying questions to those with the microphone. But other than that, I'm here to listen. So Dave, we'll start with you.
Hi, Tail. So I don't have any answers. I also don't really have much of a horse in this race, but it leads me to one of my questions, which is who is the primary beneficiary? Because I know that a large number of people that are involved in the DNS space would be attending all the groups, right? It doesn't really change except for one possibility that has to do with the work quantity, which those of you familiar with kind of real world traffic engineering, there's this concept of induced load that you can have many, many traffic jams on a highway. And so you're like, well, just add more lanes and that'll take care of the traffic jams. And what it does is brings more traffic. And so to the extent that I have any kind of bias at all, it's to think that maybe DNSOP provides a good limiting function, except when we identify something that really needs extra focus, like Deleg, to spin off and get special attention to. But my main observation is I suspect that an awful lot of people that this impacts are going to be participating in everything anyway. So.
I think you bring up a good question in that, just to reiterate what you started with was, the structure of the DNS is not for the people reading the specifications. It's how do we operate within the IETF. That's a good point. Jim?
Yeah, Jim Reed speaking for myself. I think one of the most obvious things that needs to happen here is we have a split between the operational aspects of the DNS and the protocol development and maintenance aspects. And I think having two working groups, one focusing in each of those particular areas, would be the right thing to do. And I use the word area advisedly because then we can split that between the ops area and the in area, which also seems like a sensible thing to do. At the moment, DNS is spread across the two areas, and I'm thinking it's maybe not the most efficient way to get things done. There's certainly an awful lot of work coming into the DNSOP working group. I think it's a general dumping ground for anything that's DNS related, and that's unfortunate. And I think there's an issue here probably for the co-chairs of the working group about how to manage that workload and how to prioritize it. So sometimes things that are perhaps more useful and perhaps got more of a pressing need don't get the amount of time they get in the working group because there's all this other stuff either jammed up before them or it's getting most of the attention. I think that would be something that perhaps could be handled in discussions between the co-chairs and the relevant area directors. I don't think it needs to be something worked on within this particular forum here. I think we need to have a DNS dispatch group. In my view, the simplest thing to do in the first instance would be for authors to approach the co-chairs of the existing DNS-related working groups and ask them if is your working group the right home for this item, and if not, which one do you think is the most appropriate? And that should be enough to at least get things sort of initially sorted out. If we had a DNS dispatch working group, we then go into the situation, have yet another slot to fill in the agenda of the meeting plan. And that's another great demand on our time and scheduling constraints. So I don't think that's a sensible way forward, quite frankly. I think another argument that could be there is, to use a shameless plug, we've got the DNS Directorate. So if someone's got some initial ideas about where they want things done, they can also send stuff for early review to the DNS Directorate. And surely someone there could maybe give them a steer about which would be the most appropriate working group to actually take on a particular piece of work. But I do think probably the biggest problem we've got is the fact that DNSOP is just sprawling. It's been like that since as long as I can care to remember. And I think the unfortunate problem is it puts the working group co-chairs in a horrible position, and somehow we have to find a way of spreading out that workload and taking away some of the pressures that are on the co-chairs. And I think the first thing to do there is a split between the operational aspects and the protocol development maintenance aspects. Thanks.
Thanks. Yes or no question. Do you think you could draw the big bright line between the two working groups you just suggested should exist? Well, yes or no?
I'll give it a go. Yes, I think I could do it.
I look forward to your definition. Thank you very much. You volunteered. Kian?
Hello, can you hear my voice? I'm remotely participating.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Kian from China Mobile. I came here because my recent focus on a new work. dependent on the extension of DNS. So I'd like to propose some preliminary ideas from the perspective, the necessity of advancing new work. So the one is about agent discovery. The other one is about DNS extension for cats. So the decision for the first one is to, request for a Bob meeting in IETF 125, resulted by dispatch. The second one, currently no answer. Cats Chess asked Presented to try to contact DNS Ops working group for help. So as you may know that this new work iterates at a very fast pace. If the standardization process is constrained, it will hinder technological iteration and even lead to gaps in development. So my personal suggestion is to organize a voting discussion on the controversial issues. The primary goal is to formulate a clear charter for split work items that urgently need a definite plan within like 1 to 2 years should be prioritized, but provided that they receive sufficient support from multiple vendors and operators, these work items can then be incorporated into the charter of the first working group, while the other one focuses on maintaining and advancing other existing work. So additionally, if the former, like the specific working group, focus on new work could be established, I recommend increasing meeting frequency and the promotion requirements in this specific working group. And the selection of chairs should also consider their ability to handle the higher intensity of chairing duties and draft reviews. So these are my personal opinion. Thank you. I also
Thank
posted
you
the
much.
DNS at IETF list. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. I appreciate your opinion. We didn't talk about meeting frequency. That's actually a very valid point that you brought up. Better.
Thank you.
Pacek. I think that I can draw the line between protocol development and everything else. So that's to the point of, can we even sensibly split it? I think we can, because in my opinion, when I eyeball participants on the current DNSOP list, it doesn't seem that everyone is participating in everything. So I think that we even can have some data. If someone sits down and writes a script, we can see, the number of people in different threads and how they relate to drafts and stuff. I don't want to do that, but it is technically possible. That's one point. So I think it can be split. Second point, what was it? Yeah, the amount of work. I think there is a way how to reduce the amount of work. Actually, two ways. One is not accepting or adopting drafts which don't have running code. Well, let's get back to the IETF roots and say, you don't have code, out of the room, come back when you have running code, and then we can adopt it. That would cut significantly the amount of code, amount of drafts. Plus, it would be very beneficial for output of the working group, because we have a ton of RFCs which are never implemented. And it drives me mad, because it is so much time burned on stuff which just doesn't work in practice, and no one ever tried, and it's just driving me crazy. I will perhaps go to the mic later on, but I will give floor to other people.
Great, thanks very much. Running code's always a good thing. Warren?
So either 2 or 3 things. First, a short anecdote, which Westlake kind of touched on. At the beginning of the week, we were sitting with probably 4 people who are fairly deeply involved in the DNS and the IETF. We were having a long discussion about the fact that somebody should really write a document about split DNS. And we're like, all of us like, that's a really good idea. That's an important thing. It's built in. You're nodding as though that's a good idea. Turns out that document exists. It was written in ADD. Everybody, not everybody, the majority of people in DNSOP had no idea. And that's one of my concerns. If we split this work up too much, we end up with people in different groups building stuff and a lack of information sharing. My second point was actually for Jim. Mr. Jim, there are a bunch of documents that we've got. V6 Ops operational guidelines, operational recommendations for DS automation, NS revalidation, domain verification techniques, integration, structured error, CDNS consistency, and then like the random algorithm moving. Which of those do you think would be not ops? Right, like as a litmus test, how do we just do this decision? I think it's going to be incredibly hard to figure out which are op documents and which aren't. Both you and Peter said that you think that there is a way to draw a line there. I don't know, like I can't see which of those would not be DNS op things. Big things that are protocol changes like deleg and the deprived stuff we already moved. hopefully there's more stuff we can move, because otherwise we're like stuck in this thing. And then the last one I've forgotten because I was on a good rant.
That's okay. So I will say that, Warren, that there are people that have the inverse problem, that when one mailing list and one working group is so overloaded that they can't follow it, which is not necessarily better than a whole bunch of small ones that they can't follow. It's still the same amount of mail, but okay, I think.
冲锋 China Telecom. Based on my experience that DNS is very important for network operation, and another issue including protocol extension and operation issue need to be solved. However, current DNS Ops working group is overloaded. Also from the standpoint of a draft author, it's very difficult to get a slot to present new drafts. So my proposal is to split the current working group in two working groups. One focus on operational issues and another focus on the standard making. That's my point. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Florian?
Florian Opsa, DNS operator. So splitting DNS op into two working groups, one operations, one protocol development, would not help me that much, because I would still need to pay attention to the protocol development to ensure that it doesn't make operations too painful. So I think it's really the quantity of work that we need to address.
Thanks. So let me take one pause real quick, because and you can sit down. It's not a question to you. Some people that have reached out to me have said that by splitting into two allows some stuff to progress faster, because the ops group has smaller drafts that can go faster. Other people have pointed out that's a chairing and an AD problem that should be solvable in one group, where you prioritize certain, operational drafts over the longer term drafts. One way or the other, I'm not picking sides. I'm just saying that, there are actually two different viewpoints toward that. The final thing that I'll mention is one person this week actually thought that there should be three groups, not two, right? There's ops, there's protocol development, and there's application-specific use of DNS, which I thought was an interesting idea as well. So three instead of two. But, Rolf.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up, actually. I think I mentioned it, but others may also. So again, the thing when people are using DNS, put stuff into DNS that doesn't actually change any protocol, any operations. It's just like they want to put stuff in and want to have a structure and do that. That can happen in a working group that's neither protocol nor operations. And I mean, we have applications doing DNS, might be recharter, or we might have a different group. And I think the way how DNS currently works is unsustainable, because it always is kind of like contented with stuff that somebody wants to get through the working group but can't, and then the stuff that is needed doesn't get through. And splitting that into more focused stuff, I think, will give the people, I mean, sure, they need to attend all the three meetings, but it will give them, how do you say, I'm more interested here, so I'm going to focus more on that and keep the others a bit on just on reading stuff.
All right, thanks very much. Peter?
Peter Koch, DNIC. My company operates DNS, but that's not my role. And in a previous life, I used to be a DNS op co-chair, but that's more than a decade ago, so bear with me. I think it might be helpful to take multiple steps back and ask ourselves, what do we mean by the DNS here? Is it anything over port 53, or are we talking about this living organism that is the operational reality, so to speak, at least in what we used to call the forward tree, which also has lots of policy strings attached, right? And what is exactly the IETF's responsibility in that living organism and in that anything over port 53 thing? What are invariants and paradigms? For example, we see that the threat model that DNSSEC is based on is more or less silently shifting away from there's a zone and a zone as a certain entity which isn't really following the original paradigm, and these shifts shouldn't be subliminal or silent, but if the shift is accepted, then it needs to be documented. All in all, with all this work, I think that it is hard to see the forest for the tree. So looking at the activities and categorizing them, finding where they belong and have that catalog would help inform a decision about the steps forward. Also, I think that some of the work items originate one way or another from attempts to navigate around the registry, registrar, registrant model in that living organism. And referring back to what the IETF's responsibility is, doing that by just running code might not necessarily be the best idea. Also, what others have said, that the split might not necessarily be between the protocol and the operations, but there are others, users and so forth. And actually, and I'm hesitant to say, but the operational topics might not necessarily have their home in the IETF as of today. There are other organizations that do stuff and they have more operator participation. Thank you.
Yeah, that's been discussed on the list in the last couple of days. Eric?
Yeah, so changing the mic so you can switch your head and your neck will be easier. So on your slide, you say small working group and large working group. I think it's narrow scope working group and broader scope working group. And the size of the working group can be related or unrelated. Anyway,
fair point, yes.
Yeah. On the other hand, using narrow or large or broad scope working group, I made the same mistake, my bad, also have the task maybe of the chairs and the AD. Doesn't change the speed of delivery of the participants, but for the chair and AD, it's easier if you have a narrow scope. This could be something to think about it. Regarding the coordination, I think at the leadership level between the working group chair and the respective ADs, I think happens at least once per meeting. So that's a good thing. But I agree that on the participants level, it's not the case. And this could be a problem. Like the RSC 9704, which is, by the way, is not about split DNS, but it introduced the definition of split DNS inside, as you remember. That's it. I have no solution, by the way.
Thank you very much. Nick?
Yeah, just for the speakers, please make it a little bit shorter so that everyone can to the mic. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So at the risk of saying something that might be fairly obvious, also, I'm Nick Braulio, ESNet. This sort of exists already in the V6 ops and 6 maintenance groups. So you can maybe look at that as an example of something to study. I'm not going to say it works well or it doesn't work well. From my perspective, it seems to work pretty well. It does sort of lend itself to what Eric had mentioned as narrow scope and wider scope. But that might be worth a little bit of time to just talk to people to see how that works out. And as what also might be fairly obvious is there's a huge overlap in the people that are on those lists as well.
Yeah, thanks. And actually, that's sort of DNSOP, DNSX in the past to look kind of like that. And interestingly enough, I actually heard people that don't like the split between 6, but that's a whole different, right. There's no perfect solution in any of this, of course. Andre.
So to answer the question about the efficiency and being stop being overloaded, the definition of insanity is just, not doing new things, but doing the same thing all over, and that's what is the danger here. They will split the groups and we keep doing the same thing. So with my DNS op co-chair hat, we'll be talking with Benno to how to fix off some of these things that we experience in DNS op, regardless of the outcome of this. I see the split between the operational and protocol development as a chance to have a kind of new start, if that's possible within DNS. We would have a point in time where we can actually start trying to do things a little bit different. I'm not saying better, but different. I don't want to quantify, put a quality on the previous or current work. But I think that's the main problem here. It's not whether we have 1 or 10 groups, but the problem is that, and I said it on the mailing list, that I opened the DNS op folder with the email list, and I want to just go into the woods and never go back. I kind of a little bit think if this is split into more groups, it would be like small chunks to consume at a time, so I can even return from the woods. And it might help like with the focus and the amount of the work that's put on the chairs of said working groups.
All right, thanks very much. I did find it enlightening that in the discussion this week of how far behind are you in mailing lists, a lot of people are averaging around 1 week. I'm sure everybody loves it when you go to sleep one night and you wake up the next morning and there's massive explosion of 500 messages between two people, you know, in some mailing list. Benno.
So, Benno Overeinde, I'm very happy with Andre as my co-chair. He exactly said what I wanted to say about managing the work, fast-tracking some work, maybe some more substantial work, also parallel, but that doesn't mean that that other smaller drafts cannot make any progress. So mostly the management and improvement. So let's give my minutes to Warren.
All right, Warren, I think you may get the last word.
Yep, and I'll try to talk fast. Just a couple of quick things. A, I'm not sure the V6 ops and 6-man thing is necessarily a great model. There has previously been a fair bit of tension sometimes between those groups.
Can you describe that better? Why?
I can't do it without using rude words. I mean, basically, like V6 ops being pissy that 6-man has designed something that they think is can't be operated, and 6-man being pissy that they designed something, and V6 ops is like, why'd you do it that way?
I think we do that within one group just fine.
Yeah, we do that with one. On the should we require implementations thing, that's been a long topic in a number of working groups, including CIDR. IDR currently requires this, and what it has done is made it so there's some set of people who are sort of gatekeepers to protocol changes, right? In many cases, it ends up being the implementers are the only ones who can realistically add certain features to their code, especially if your code base is fairly big and has grown over time. And so you end up with people sort of in a privileged position. At the moment, the way DNSOP works is largely something becomes standardized and then the implementers decide if they want to implement it. We would need a paradigm shift where implementers would consider working on something while it's still a draft, with the assumption, that it might get published. And I understand why implementers aren't currently doing for each ID, because there's so much crazy in the world. And so it would just require like a different way of working. Not initially a bad idea, just.
Benno.
Small comment on that. I'm a big fan of implementations, but I'm very happy as a chair, and speaking for myself, it can be a proof of concept. Yeah, so it shouldn't be part of an, yeah.
All right.
Or just commitment from the implementers. It
Right.
doesn't have to be like say, we will work on that.
All right, so thank you all very much for the input. If you came here expecting an answer at the end of the discussion, I'm sorry to disappoint you. We are still collecting feedback. Continue, please, writing the mailing list. And as I said, I think one of the bigger problems to talk about is how to do the rate limiting of the IETF volunteerism, as a whole. We haven't hit that yet, and I'll try and drop some leading question in the mailing list if nobody starts commenting on it immediately, because I think the reality is no matter how many groups you have, there is a fixed amount of bandwidth that we have, and we don't want to get to the point where everybody is 2 to 3 weeks behind instead of just 1 week behind. So, all right, thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Wes, for that. So, yeah, Mikael.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael from the UK National Cybersecurity Centre. I wanted to give you a quick readout of a side meeting that we hosted earlier in the week. I'll try and keep it quite brief because I know we're short on time. So we go to the next slide. Sorry. Only got one more. Is that working? There we go. Cool. So the goals of this side meeting was very much to be a discussion and try and get a wide perspective on the current cybersecurity risks and how we might defend against those. We had about 50 people in the room, which was really great, from both security and operational backgrounds. So it's a really useful conversation to have. I'll run through some of the stuff we talked about, but please do come and talk to me afterwards. I guess we tried to track some of the impacts. There was acknowledgement that this is real world stuff. It wasn't just us talking about cyber. There was real world impacts that people are seeing. And we talked about advanced threats and ransomware and kind of supply chain risks and the need to to understand your inventory and understand the code you're running due to memory safety issues. So there was a real wide range of cybersecurity issues. It wouldn't be a side meeting at IETF without talking about AI, so there was a bit of that as well. We didn't really get into the kind of network management side of AI or the attacker or defender use of AI, so maybe that's one for the future as well. I think more relevant to this group is we talked quite a lot about mitigations and defenses, and there was acknowledgement that actually a lot of those depend on operational expertise. So for example, resilience. You guys think about that a lot, not having a single point of failure, for example, and that's really important from a security point of view as well. So I guess that was acknowledgement that we can help each other there. Similarly, from the security point of view, we can put out good advice, but it's understanding how those defense techniques impact operations and how we can work together on that. So things like how do we incentivize network segmentation? How do we incentivize backups to be resilient against ransomware, for example? These are all great things to say from a security perspective, but how do we get that operational perspective as well? And similarly, advice about defense in depth, understanding that we need to know what threats are on the endpoint, on the network, on the edge, and I guess concluding that network operations and security kind of go hand in hand. They aren't disconnected disciplines. They need to work together, and that's some of the motivation around the security operations draft that Benoit mentioned earlier. So running quickly through next steps, we did record the meeting. If you're interested, you can watch that back. I'll share it with this group. We're looking to set up a mailing list, so if you're interested, please do engage with that or come and talk to me afterwards. Thank you.
And for you as well, Michael, please continue involved in OPSAREA working group in the work you are doing there, and hopefully having a subset of people who are interested to join. So thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. So this is time for open mic. If there are any topics that you want to discuss or item that you want to raise, it's up to you.
Just a very quick thanks to Med and Wes for running the DNS stuff and trying to figure out how to organize it.
Okay, so if there is no one on the queue, I think that we can adjourn for today. So thank you all for the constructive discussion and positive spirit. So see you next time. Thanks.